What is up, players? It's Warboss Tail with this mug. Today I'm going to be doing a Heresy Peace Theater episode on, it's like an unbooking of Descent of Angels by Michael Scanlon. This is a Horus Heresy book, which means it features the 30k universe, armies, and setting. So, Dark Angels in the 30k. In fact, before they're even the Dark Angels, the thing I love about this book, which I've read I want to say maybe like 5 or 6 Horus Heresy books so far. If you do not know, this book deals primarily with the inhabitants of the world Caliban, and their life and their kind of world before the Emperor came to bring the light of imperial truth to the world. Now, the Space Marines and the Imperium, let's take a look at what really quickly, before we get into the book itself, what each one represents. The Space Marines are the genetic super soldiers, superhuman super soldiers that have been, they've had all their humanity, everything that makes them, anything really that makes them regular, run-of-the-mill humans, kind of tweaked, altered, changed, in order to become these super soldiers that can survive in horrible climates and withstand terrible punishment, able to be like super strong, super smart, and just have a lot of heightened capabilities that regular humans don't have. In return for this, most of them have to take on the lives of reclusive warrior monks. They get cut off from humanity because they're not human anymore, really. They're barely human, and the humans look up to them, they revere them, but they also fear them because Space Marines are no longer like us. So the interesting thing about this novel is that the entire first half of it takes place on Caliban, even more, maybe like 2/3. The first 2/3 of it takes place on Caliban, which is a kind of medieval era planet. Like when you think back to King Arthur, knights, castles, monasteries, and stuff like that, then that's kind of what this is, except that instead of regular swords, they have chain blades or chain swords, and instead of, or along with bows and arrows and stuff, they have pistols, which are very primitive bolt pistols. And the interesting thing about it is that when humanity went out into the stars in this universe, when we went out and colonized all the distant planets, we lost track of each other because of great warp storms that fell. So we lost communication with all of the different planets out in the universe. And I might as well show some stuff here. And when we lost track with all these planets, they each had to evolve and grow in their own different ways. So Caliban kind of developed, because Caliban is a heavily forested world, lots of forests and dark and dangerous and stuff, then they had to develop, and they've become kind of like I said, this very medieval era kind of society. So in this world, in Caliban, and just to let you know if you haven't known already, there's going to be spoilers. In this world of Caliban, you can kind of see the monastery, very, very cathedral and Gothic look, which is common in all 40k. On this world, in the forests, they've been inhabited by all of these beasts, and they call them the great beasts of Caliban because each one is different. There's no real common kind of thread between any of the beasts, except that they love to kill, they love to hunt, and they prey on the humans because they're so big. And so each one is different. Like one of them is described as being a bear, another is kind of insect-like, another has wings and kind of like an eagle. But they're all mean and vicious, and they all want to eat up the humans as much as they can. So on this world, in this setting, we start. We have no idea who the Emperor is, what the Imperium is. We know that there is something called Terra, which is another word for Earth, which these people talk about almost as if it was a myth or a fantasy or something that is not real. And the whole beginning of the book sets up the fact that, yeah, there's fairy tales of this place called Terra out among the stars where we came from. But this is our home now. This is Caliban, and this is the kind of world that we have to live in. So, most of the story takes place in this knightly monastery, and in this monastery there is an order of knights that's just simply called the Order, and most of the story takes place, just about all of it takes place from the viewpoint of a supplicant, or a young, like a knight in training, or a squire, I guess you could say. I guess it's another word for squire, but they don't ever use the word squire. But so this squire and his friends, who are really young boys at the very beginning of the novel, we chart their growth from the beginning to when they become knighted, to when the emperor and his and the First Legion lands on Caliban, to when they get carried up into space and become made Dark Angels. So it's a fantastic story. The thing that I love about it the most is that it takes the 40K setting, or the 30K setting, as it were. It takes the universe and everything we know, and it makes its own story that does not adhere to what we know. And I say that because we don't really, before this book came out, there wasn't really anything solid and concrete on Caliban except from what we read in the Index Astartes articles. So we didn't really know what kind of world it was, how the people lived. And I just think it's so great looking at it from this young boy who grew up and trained and worked his butt off to get into the Order, and how important all of his teachers and mentors consider tradition and learning and discipline and honor. And getting to see Lionel Johnson, the eventual Primarch of the Dark Angels, along with his best friend and brother-in-arms, Sir Luther, just getting to see them before the Imperium and before the Emperor, and how they live here on Caliban is just so great. I love this book. I think the only time where it falters is a little bit towards the end. They have all this buildup of the Emperor coming, and you know it, and you're expecting it. You're expecting Dark Angels to arrive, and you're expecting them, the main characters, to become Dark Angels and to take the fight out into space. And they really glance over the part of becoming a Space Marine that I thought would have been really, really awesome, which is the actual implantations of all the new organs and the beginning parts of having to be a Space Marine. It kind of takes, spoiler, it kind of leaps from when the boys realize that they are going to go up and be a Space Marine to when they have finished their training and they're already on their first official Space Marine mission. I kind of wish that they would have done a little bit more in between, but they kind of mention it, but a little bit more would have been nice. In the beginning, it's like reading a fantasy tale. It's almost like it's set in a Warhammer Fantasy universe. In the Warhammer Fantasy universe, because of the forests and the descriptions of the trees, and it's almost like magic. And you've got mention of who Cypher is, Lord Cypher, what he represents, and you can see the seeds and the beginnings of the things like the inner circle and what it represents. And you see the precursors of the Raven Wing, because in Caliban, the Raven Wing was a real thing. They were known as the Raven Wing, and they were like cavalry knights who lived alone and isolated out in the forests hunting the beasts. And it's just a great book. And the whole beginning of it takes place before they even get reunited. So, my thoughts on the book: fantastic beginning, great middle section, kind of falters in the end when they have to actually go out and have their first battle, but it's still a nice strong close, and it wraps up really, really quickly with the main characters heading back to Caliban with Sir Luther. There's something that happens, I'm not going to spoil that part, where the Lion decides that Luther and some of the other Dark Angels are not going to be going out into the Great Crusade with them. And it's kind of hinted at, but you never really get the idea that he feels either betrayed or jealous or anything else. But you do know that Lionel Johnson orders Sir Luther and among them the main character, a bunch of other Dark Angels, back to Caliban in order to, as he says, speed up the recruiting and the training process of upcoming Dark Angels, which to the people going back, they kind of regard as being abandoned or being spurned and dishonored. So it definitely lays the groundwork for what I hope will be the next novel in this story of the main characters. And yeah, great book, great read. I got through it. This is one of the books that I got through the fastest. And so let's take a look at the characters now. Lionel Johnson, he's got a couple of great chapters, especially in the beginning. He has a great conversation with the main character where he's talking about his destiny. And he believes at the beginning his destiny is to reunite Caliban, because Caliban is a bunch of isolated little states and monasteries and civilizations and settlements, and he wants to destroy all the great beasts haunting the forests and kind of make the people unafraid and prosperous. He wants to make them prosperous and usher in a new age of peace. And he doesn't know it, but he's really echoing the Emperor's plan to reunite humanity on a smaller scale. So when he gets reunited with the Emperor, he realizes his greater destiny. And I think it was really nice in the beginning to see him kind of not really knowing what his destiny is and believing that it's stuck on this one planet. Luther, his best friend, you get a lot of great information with him, especially for those of you who know that in the story Luther's going to end up betraying Lionel Johnson and the two of them fight to the death. But yeah, that lays the groundwork really, really nicely. Israfel and Hadariel are the two, or actually Israfel is the one that kind of recognizes in the main character that he's got some psychic powers. Hadariel he becomes a chapter master, and but originally he was one of the masters of the Order of Knights before the Imperium comes down to the planet. Zahariel is the main character, and you really get a sense from the writer that he wants to do the good thing and the honorable thing. And at his side for the whole novel is Nemiel, and you get shades of Lionel Johnson's and Luther's relationship, their competitiveness, well, not really their competitiveness, but their relationship and how they rely on each other as brothers, and how one of them is clearly starting to edge ahead of the other. You get that between Zahariel and Nemiel's kind of characters, and you can tell that there's going to be some friction later on in the series, but beautifully set up. And of course, the most tragic stories are those that start off in love and brotherhood and affection. So, yeah, what else is there? There's some other characters. You get to meet some White Scars late in the book. Not too much, though, and then they're gone. They're just in it's like a cameo appearance by them. But yeah, Watchers in the Dark, they're in this one too, for all of you Dark Angels fans out there. But as a final piece to this, I want to show you this one website. It's called thedarkfortress.co.uk. The Dark Fortress, all one word, .co.uk. And it's a compilation of a bunch of Dark Angels art, modeling, hobbying, and tactica. Fantastic. I was just looking up pre-Heresy Dark Angels, and I found this. The Dark Angels before the Horus Heresy wore all black, and it's another all-black army, just like the Raven Guard and the Iron Hands. But a beautiful army, a lot of Gothic imagery here, and very inspirational. So whenever I'm doing one of these videos, I like to look up the inspiration, or I like to look up the actual novel itself to remind myself what was in it. I like to look up the Lexicanum page to see various artworks and read a little bit more about what I'm talking about. And then I like to find one more thing. Cool Mini or Not is great. Any kind of article online or website that has pictures of painted armies. Here's another one. Pre-Heresy Dark Angels that have been extended and elongated to look a little bit more like true scale. So they actually look human-sized rather than kind of stunted. But beautiful. Descent of Angels, check it out. If you want some more information, thedarkfortress.co.uk, check that out too. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Laters!